All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a good day. I'm going to take a minute here today to show you guys how I take my cuttings. Just real quick, I'm just going to say there's more than one way to do almost anything. I'm just kind of showing you what works for me. This is actually 4 cuttings. You can get a good idea with the size of the pot it's in there with my hands down there. I actually had, this was originally in a much larger bowl pan that had, maybe 10 to 15 cuttings about that size that I just kind of let overgrow. I needed the bigger bowl pan for something, so I kind of harvested a bunch of them out. I thought I made a video of it, but I can't find the video. I don't know, I looked and I just can't find it. I wanted to kind of reference it actually as I got started here, but these were all still kind of small, and quite honestly, they got some really funky looking trunks down in here. Maybe after I prune it up a little bit, you guys will be able to see a little bit better. All right, so I got these trimmed way back. Real quick, before I get to the cuttings, you can see I left plenty of green. The only time I've ever really killed any ports is when this was actually in the larger bowl pan, and right in the middle of rainy season, probably August 2 years ago, I'm going to guess. I think these are about 3 years old now. I noticed that, it was really tall and starting to outweigh itself and almost getting ready to flip over as wide as that bowl pan was. So I just went in and I cut them all back down to nothing, and I thought, well, they'll just sprout new leaves and everything. I'd say like 70% of them did, but then like 30% of them just rotted in there, and that was another reason I went ahead and harvested some out just so I could pull all the rot out and everything. And I'm going to explain it here in a minute, is they are succulents. Remember, they're storing water up here. So if you're getting lots of rain and it's growing really, really well, that's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If you cut everything off, well, then suddenly the water has nowhere to go, and there's a good chance it might rot like it did for me. All right, I got these 3, and then this one. I tried to get them right around the same size. I really didn't get too ambitious here, really just only about pinky sized. But I'm going to try to do it 2 different ways here. The one common idea is that after cutting them, you want this to callus over. And the main reason that you do that is to prevent rot. The way I usually do it is I just put it in the dry soil, and then I just never water until I notice new growth. I never use rooting hormone on these. Rooting hormone really, it works on ficus or, maybe your trees up north and everything else, but it does not work on succulents at all. The idea here is when these have roots, they pull water up and they just grow more leaves to store the water. When it goes through a dry spell, the leaves actually supply the roots, and that's when you'll see the leaves start shrinking back up and going back down. So when you take a cutting, you have the leaves up here, which then start searching for water, and they kind of, start shriveling up, and then that'll be when it kind of shoots roots in. Now, it's a succulent which can survive in dry soil for quite some time. So as soon as it starts rooting in, sometimes you can actually tell you. I've had them sometimes where I haven't even noticed new growth yet, but then I'll go and pick up the cutting, and the pot actually comes up with it. I do it both ways. I'm going to do it my way, where I don't let them dry up, and then I'm going to go ahead and take the other 2, and I'll leave them dry up. And then the reason why I'm doing 4 is that I have 2 pots ready to go with what I use for my substrate for my trees, which is lava rock and pumice. And I have 2 pots ready to go with just Miracle-Gro potting soil. Real quick, I know a lot of people are against Miracle-Gro products. I use the potting soil for indoor potting, even though I use it outside. If you ever go to use the outdoor one, it says that it's got moisture control, and I don't really know what that is, but anytime I've tried to use that, that just goes badly. That's what they sell in the bigger bags. I usually use the smaller bags that does not have the moisture control. I do not like that part of the product at all. I'm going to start off with the one I'm going to put in the Miracle-Gro potting soil. That's the easiest one. What would be best, actually, here, I'm going to move these 3 out of the way. What would be, really, if you could come up with a good way, if you could just rest it right on top of the soil without burying it at all, because then when it goes out and search for that, it would spread out and you'd get a nice Nabaria right away. But you've got to get it in there because it's got to be able to hold still too. So what I do is I take off as much of the top as I can while still leaving some green, and also hopefully a couple of growing tips. If you notice, I cut that one off right there. It had a growing tip right there. And then that should be plenty light enough with plenty of leaves in there to, again, search the water out. and I just put it in there. And then I leave that sit, and I leave that sit until, like I said, I start seeing new growth. This one I'm going to do the same thing on. I'm going to cut off some of the stuff up top. This is almost too long up here, but I really didn't want to leave this one, which is kind of growing towards the other piece there. I do find that sometimes I like to save that Y, because now when I stick it in there, I can kind of leave that to lean up against the side of the pot as I try to hold it still and everything. Now this one's in the better substrate. This substrate is much harder to push into, so I'm going to go ahead. Use something there to just kind of start that hole a little bit. All right, and then these last two here, I'm just going to kind of prep them. That should be good there. And that should be enough there. And what I'll do, I will save this video so I can show you the results of all four. But what I'll do now is I'll just let these callus over, as I said, maybe 3-4 days, and then go ahead and put them in the same type of soil and everything, and then just measure the results and see how they work. Real quick before we do cut to see the results here in a few months, or well, a few months. I'm guessing probably about a month maybe. I'm gonna go ahead and mention that you know, like in Australia, and you know, probably even some places down here if you're patient enough. I mean, I know our nursery does, but you can even find like really big ones in people's yards and everything. Now, if you have a cutting that's like that big, you would really, I would actually personally not plant that day. I would let that callus over for probably at least a week or so and let that whole thing dry up, because that succulent really can hold a lot of moisture in there, and you wouldn't want your cuttings to rot. These smaller ones, I think the smaller ones really don't matter all that much. It's just as, like I said, just the main thing is leaving them nice and dry until you start to see some growth. All right, so it's been just about 6 weeks. That first part of the video we shot June 26th, today is August 6th. Took 4 cuttings. I put 2 of them in soil right away, and then I let 2 of them dry out, and I put them in soil about 5 days later. This one is one of the ones that I planted right away in organic soil. This branch here wasn't even pruned. I don't think it ever even slowed down. It just like kept right on going. All these other little ones here, that's all new growth. I started noticing, you know, you can really first start noticing when you see the really tiny growth like that, if in fact you don't have much on there. If you remember when I took these, I did leave quite a bit. Still have not been watering it yet. They do sit on my lanai, which is, if you don't live in Florida, it's just basically a screened-in porch. It is covered. But today, after this video here, I'm going to go ahead and move them out where they can get some rain, and they'll start really putting on some growth then. But that's what that one looks like. Up next here is the one that I also planted right away. This is in the inorganic soil. This one was cut back a little bit further, so it didn't have that much growth on there. But you can see these little small leaves there starting to grow out. Right here, that new small one there. Means the cutting's taken. I did test these. You know, this one's not as solid in there as the other one was. I didn't show you the other one, but you can feel that it's, you know, got some roots in there. In the inorganic soil, it'll take longer to grow into that soil, but it will make for a better quality nabari and everything over time. This one I'll actually show you real quick. You can actually, I mean, you know, not too bad for a cutting 6 weeks old, right? All right, and then these other two, and I just leave the cuttings sit in the shade for, I think it was about 5 days before I planted them. This one's in inorganic soil, starting to get its new little growth there. I could wait a little while before I start watering this one too, but I'll go ahead and just move all 4 of these out into the rain. They'll all be fine. Here's the one in organic soil. Again, I don't think I really cut this or this piece, and they just kind of kept right on growing. But you can see new growth there and new growth there. I always want to have some evidence of new growth. You know, this is my opinion. Everything's my opinion, but you do want to wait until you actually see evidence of new growth before you start watering them. It's just best. And then for the sake of just experimenting some, I do want to see what these roots look like. And you can see it's almost already made. Nice little ball there, all staying together. I thought I'd pull it out and all that soil would fall off. Let's take a closer look here. So there we go. That's what came out in just 6 weeks. I'll let that stay on there. I don't really want to pull too much of it off. And so there we go. 4 new little dwarf jade trees.